like to see. We'll do our best. Might get the black pieces. Seems likely, but never a guarantee. Here we go. That's a scary username as well. D4 played. How should we handle it? Johnny Applesauce Destroyer. I'm going to play knight f6. It's the most flexible move. Lots of different options. I mean, we could go for like a Nimzo. We could still go for a d5, e6 type of Queen's Gambit setup. We could go for a King's Indian. We could go for a Grunfeld. It's all possible after knight f6, so quite flexible. Now we're up against something very familiar, right? The London. The London. How do you handle the London system? An age-old question. Everyone has their little systems that they like to play. But the one thing about the London is usually low-rated London players need to be tested in the most direct way possible. And the most direct way that you can test them is to immediately play c5 and queen b6. Quite honestly, if you play the London and you are confident handling an early queen b6 move to attack your center and your b pawn, which is a big reason why you have to be careful of your b pawn, right? Your bishop left that c1 square. If you can handle this move comfortably every time, then I promise you, your London system is in a good spot. Like, you don't have anything to worry about. These are the moves that will just ruin people's lives as, 500, 600, 1,000 rated players playing the London. It's always that early queen move that just kills you. It's just so tough to play against. So let's see how he handles it. I'm not going to do anything too crazy here. I'm just going to attack b2, b3. Look, can't criticize b3 too much because honestly, the move makes a lot of sense. Queen b6 happens. Why wouldn't you play b3? Pawn's being attacked. Now, knight c3 or knight a3 are probably the two main moves here. Both of them hang the pawn. It's not simple to sit there and understand that you are supposed to hang the pawn. So of course, I'm expecting most players at this rating to play b3, but still, if you play the London, you have to have an understanding of how to handle queen b6. So okay, he's played b3. I think we're going to continue fairly standard with just d5 here. There are other ways we could try to play, like maybe e6 I'm thinking as well. But I kind of like d5. Obviously, the best possible scenario for me is getting my bishop out, then moving my pawn, and then having this bishop out, rather than playing e6 and just having the bishop. So this move is never a concern here. Knight to f3 is pretty much going to get me to play bishop g4. I want to play e6. I also think I'm putting some good pressure on d4 by playing this, because bishop here kind of threatens to take, queen takes, and then maybe win a pawn here. So I like that this move comes with a built-in threat. What are my next moves? I already have like 5-6 moves that I'm basically ready to play them in some order or another. And they are pawn to e6, knight c6, pawn takes d4, rook c8, bishop e7, castle, and maybe bishop takes f3 in the right moment. That's a list of all the moves that I'm ready to play or that I'm considering playing. e6 to me makes the most sense. It opens the bishop, and then there might be ideas like bringing the bishop to d4. Delivering a nice little check there. Knight c6 immediately puts some pressure on this d pawn, which is kind of nice. Kind of has the idea of taking and taking here. So I do like that. I think it's between these. At some point, if white was playing the right moves, I think we would see this. Pawn takes on c5. My next move is going to be e6. Ready to play that. And if castles, then it might almost be time to take the knight c6. But I kind of want to see what white's doing with this knight. Like if knight c3, there could be some really, really bad things happening. Okay, well, hopefully we didn't speak it into existence here for his sake. So knight to c3, not the end of the world. You might think it is, not the end of the world, but it really looks wrong. So you play knight c3, and this is why the pawn on b3 is so bad. If the pawn was on b2, barring the fact that it'd be hanging, we wouldn't be talking about this because the knight's so well defended. Here, the first thing that I'm looking at is queen a5 because it hits the knight, which is not defended. It also pins it. That would force my opponent to play one of those moves. Queen d2 or queen d3. The other thing we could do is we could take on d4. White would take it back somehow, and then we would put pressure with these pins. Okay? So those are the things that we are considering here. I like the move queen a5 to start, because if queen d3, I think c4 immediately wins. I also think that if queen d2, this move hits a little harder. If I take first, what I don't like is that anytime I pin the knight, technically bishop d2 can happen, defends the knight, and also unpins it. So then the knight could just move next turn. Whereas queen here, if queen d2 and I take, suddenly bishop b4 is about to win the game. So it actually looks a little bit tricky. So I'm going to start with queen a5. This is why I wanted to provoke the move b3. We're on move 7, and my opponent already has a lot to prove in terms of surviving the opening here. Knight's attacked. There's only 2 moves. King d2 is just nonsense. Even if I didn't have that move, it would be nonsense. Good move. Queen d2. Now in this position, if I take, I can't just sit there and assume that my opponent's going to play some of the worst moves possible. Pawn takes and allow bishop there, which would be game over on the spot. After pawn takes, white should probably play the, crafty looking move. Oh, knight b5, right? Then all of a sudden, knight c7 is a real threat. And although we have bishop b4 there, it's definitely something that needs calculation. I'm looking at this, and I'm seeing maybe we want to take first. Knight e4, oof. Hella, knight e4 would actually lose the game after knight takes. Your queen is hanging, and if you go take, the knight takes back, so you lose a piece there. Careful. No knight e4. Definitely not. Bishop takes f3. The only question is, do we want to include that move first? That's the only thing we really need to decide. Because we want to do this and we want to do that. That's a guarantee. I think I want to take the knight. That's the way I feel. I want to take this, and play bishop b4. It's just the simplest way to get everything done that I'd like to do. Because I know I want bishop b4. If we take here, there's also knight takes, which is not so clear because there's knight b5 and it gets a little messy. So I think this is a way to keep it nice and controlled. Now I take this, and again, we're hitting the knight. So it needs to be reacted to. No matter what takes back, I'm pretty sure my next move is going to be bishop b4. And just based on the position, you'll notice it's really, really hard / impossible for that knight to get defended. Shades of our previous game, actually, if you know what I mean by that. But once that pawn moves, it's so easy to attack this. And this is a perfect example of why the London is an easy opening to take down. When you're playing someone 800-900, that early queen attack on the b-pawn forced it forward, and white's had to deal with this problem ever since. And the problem is that that knight is just not supported. This is why you can't have the pawn on b3. The London system and a pawn on b3 do not go hand in hand. Not only are we going to win this knight, by the way, we're going to win the knight and maybe more. Impossible for white to defend here. And we're only on move 10. Well, that move does not do anything to save the queen. Oops. Oops. There's one thing that he might try, which is bishop b5 check. And if I take it, then the queen takes the bishop. But we're just not going to fall for that. And as long as I don't take on b5, then we're okay here. Would long castle have helped? No, might have even made it worse. I would have taken here, and if you save your queen, I have checkmate in a couple moves, so definitely not. But this, yeah, we're definitely not going to take it. We need to get a check. I'm thinking of knight c6. The only reason I'm second guessing myself is because I actually think I want the c file to stay open so that my rooks can join in the attack really quickly. So I think I'm going to play either king e7 or knight d7 so that we have the open c file still. Not like knight c6 is a mistake, but objectively, I think I do want to keep the open line. So the reason I like king e7 is that if I put a knight somewhere in the way, the bishop can trade. If I move my king, then I'm thinking to myself, okay, you know, all of a sudden, I'm threatening to take and win another piece. So I like the idea of moving the king for that reason alone. This also helps my rook maybe move to c8 next turn. And something interesting is that, you know, if my opponent plays rook d1 or something, yeah, I can take and take. But the other thing that's on deck is knight e4. Threatening to win the game on the spot with checkmate by taking the queen, and then kind of encouraging my opponent to trade me on c3. Instead of me having to take and the bishop coming back, hitting my queen, this move comes closer to encouraging that. So king e7, the reason I don't care about this is because I know I'm winning the queen next turn, so it's not like my king is going to be in any specific danger. I don't think he's letting the clock run. I think he was in a tough spot after bishop b4. He thought for a while how to save his knight, realized he couldn't. Came up with, honestly, a relatively interesting idea. It takes a good player to have restraint and not take this free piece. And now he's realized, you know, the truth, the reality is setting in. It's like, oh, I'm actually losing my queen here and maybe more. b4. Honestly, another pretty resourceful attempt. Right? Like, he's trying. He's trying. The reason we can take the queen is because it's with a check. Can't take our queen, and then no matter how he recaptures, we capture the bishop. Now we're up a queen and a knight for nothing. Queen and a knight for nothing. That's quite powerful. More than enough, as they say. More than enough. e5. If our opponent can't castle, I feel our position is going to be quite good. b5 looks like kind of a whatever move, but it's actually really strong. Stopping knight c6, I'm not going to lie, is really annoying. So the two moves I'm looking at here so far are queen takes here, because, hey, who doesn't like making a threat? But knight e4 is the other one, and I'm probably settling on knight e4. Bring more pieces in towards that king. Go for the mate. Okay, rook b1. I think we see the intended move, bishop b4, check. Most likely that's the intention. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that bishop before it can end up there. And after the king takes, I think there'll be some pawns that I can finally collect. All right, well, we're not going to be able to checkmate this king with just our queen. Some more pieces are needed, absolutely. Rook c8. There you go. Need a rook on the open file. Okay, rook d1, a great looking move. We should move somewhere that makes a threat against this pawn. So, you know, these squares all come to mind. This one looks nice because it comes with a threat and it wins a pawn. Okay, a good move. And again, we could go here and try to take more pawns. I'm probably going to choose this just to retain the tempo. Rook d1 is forced. We'll go once again. Another move with the queen. Check. Ooh, and the king move is helpful. Now I think we might be able to do it with checks. We'll check here. Definitely that move cannot happen. Take this one with a check. Rook b2 does drop the rook, so we may indeed see the king move to one of these squares. A1 looks more safe, but actually gets mated in 2 moves. All right, all right. Let's have a look-see. London. What did I say? We need to be able to handle this queen b6 stuff. The truth is, the answer for white is one of these moves. I do not expect an 800 to know that. I do not. Thank you very much, by the way, to Hella during that last game for 5 kick subs. Thank you for the subs, Hella. Now, it may have been a little atonement for a wild suggestion. However, still valid. Thank you very much. Also, MapRail joining us on Kick. 30 kick subs from MapRail. Thank you very much. MapRail is a London enjoyer as well. So pay attention because we're not only talking about how this move can annoy white, but what white should do. Remember? Knight a3, knight c3. Why are these 2 moves what white should do? Well, no matter which one you choose, queen takes b2. No matter which one, like I said, the knight will end up on b5. Now, knight c7 is a huge threat. If you decided to play knight a6 here, surprisingly, you would already be in a situation where you're losing. After knight a6, white plays a3, and amazingly, there's no way for that queen to actually get out here. It's like, huh? Now the queen is fully trapped in there. And after something like rook b1 or maybe bishop c4 setting up rook b1, which traps the queen, it would already be concerning. So, black could play knight d5. Oh, that's a bit better. Attacks the bishop and covers that square. And not only is there a forced draw here, I've played this a bunch of times. I think that it's an interesting way to play. Honestly, objectively speaking, it is a draw. That is one of the best things you can do here. But if you don't play this position properly, both sides could lose it. Okay, but this is the standard stuff in the London. You play this, you go after c7. Queen b4, c3, and you get hit with knight c7 next turn, so not that impressive. But that's more standard for white. Queen c1 is very bad, you lose a pawn. And there's no other way to defend this, so that's why most players who play the London are just not equipped to deal with an early queen b6 move. b3. So he plays b3. It's not a bad move when you think about dealing with b2. Like, makes a lot of sense, but it's just a faux pas. If you want to play the London, you have to understand some basic things. You can't play this move. It does not go with the London. The whole point of this setup is to play c3 with the pawn on b2. To have those pawns flip the opposite way means that the setup is not solid, it's not secure, and it's not what you're supposed to be doing at all. So it kind of defeats the whole point of even trying to play the London if you're going to play this, because these pawns do not make sense together. Okay, and now we're able to get this move in. Take on d4, and there's just such a problem here. This move is really bad. Bishop b4, and basically the game ends here. There's no stopping this. Obviously, it's just mistakes are happening one after the other here. King e7, which I think is probably one of the best moves. Not allowing the bishop to trade for a knight. So I like this move. And then, yeah, from here it's just clean up. But that's the London. Getting in trouble early. Because what do I think London players not know how to do? Handle early queen b6. It's the #1 reason why bishop f4 feels awkward. Is, wait a minute, I left that pawn behind. I was supposed to watch over it. I was supposed to defend it. So I find it's a great test if I'm playing somebody in the London to just attack that pawn and see how they react. If they play these moves, it's not like black's in trouble, by the way. I could take the pawn. I could just choose not to, play normally. But still, I find that it's a good litmus test for how well prepared my opponent is, how confident they are in the London. If I attack their pawn, how do they handle it? b3 already tells me, mistake. They're not a seasoned London player. Not a confident London player.